I wrote a column earlier on Off the Hook Sports, and you can read it, how Tennessee doesn't have the same pop that they had in 2022. And that Tennessee, the one big change, obviously players are a part of it, but we think Tennessee's had talent, right?
Yes.
So, Caleb, I'm listening to a former Vol talk on the radio yesterday, and he's like, well, that Tennessee is now 10-2. And Tennessee needs to look at
8-2. We're assuming they're going to go 10-2.
Okay, gotcha. If Tennessee's 10-2 and they're a 10-win football team, that's what I was trying to say. The past couple of years, that's where they've been, but not truly competing for a championship because of the Columbia collapse and then a lot of issues last year. If they don't make it this year again, and they're just another 10-2 team, do you need to make changes? Because this former Vol, Jason Swain, who mentioned it, he's like, maybe you need to recruit different athletes. Maybe you need to look at your staff. I don't have any problem with the defensive staff, despite what happened Saturday when Tim Banks got out coached by Mike Bobo. But I do have a problem with Joey Halzle, and I wonder what he's bringing to the table. I was told that Alex Golesh was the type of coach that would run the game through his mind. This person said a bazillion times. And he was, I don't want to say a savant, but he was a big part of what they did in 2022. Now, there's a couple reasons that this concept is scary. If it's more Alex Golesh's offense, which I don't believe it is, I believe it's Josh Heupel's, but I think you can use more cooks in the kitchen in this particular case and have more input. So if you go down this road, it's scary because then Josh Heupel is admitting to some extent that it's not his offense, that it's an offense that's everywhere, that's predicated on certain things that other people do, but it's not his offense. Would be admitting that Alex Golesh, that it was more his offense than his. I also want to add this. I think that you're dealing with a coach who's already very protective from the media. And I think he's a little bit paranoid. And you've seen Alabama bring in all these assistants that help you develop game plans. Butch Jones, Lane Kiffin at Alabama. And I don't think that that's Josh Heupel's nature. I think he's protective because of what's happened to him in the past. He wasn't recruited at a high level. He had to prove people wrong. He got fired at Oklahoma. And I'll take it a step further with what happened with the Connor Stallions thing. I don't think you want everybody knowing everything. So maybe that whole Alabama thing of having 1,000 analysts is a thing of the past, Caleb, and would be even if Nick Saban were still around. But I don't think it's ever going to be a part of Josh Heupel's future.
So this is a red, like, I got to be honest with you, Dave. This is kind of what I think is a red flag about Josh Heupel, if what you're saying is true. And this is kind of a big deal.
It's a real big deal.
What era is Josh Heupel living in? I mean, being paranoid and being protective, you're going to have assistants leave. You're going to have people come around. This isn't the Fulmer era or the Johnny Majors era where, where they basically felt that their entire success was about this loyal staff they could have with them the whole time. That doesn't happen in college football anymore. And people are going to talk. Jacob Warren told us on Monday, one of the biggest differences is the family of coaches in this offense have now been scattered across the country. I can tell you that there was somebody who was so interested in Josh Heupel's offense when he was at UCF. It was this Division III football coach. He literally sent his whole staff to cover UCF practices for about 3 weeks. And they learned it. And they came back and they unveiled it too. You can't expect everybody. So here's the question. This is why I'm bringing all this up. Is the question and is the issue Joey Halzle? Or is it that Josh Heupel, in an archaic way, thought that he had some secret formula to an offense that wasn't going to get out ever? Because if he thought the latter, that's insane. Offenses are not Colonel Sanders' secret formula to fried chicken, guys. Okay? They're going to get out.
Right.
And does he think he could keep that?
Well, and Joe Klatt said something about this too, who I think's done a really good job, and I've been, frankly, pleasantly surprised. Joe Klatt said that Tennessee doesn't have the answer. They don't have the counter punch on offense. And I tend to agree with that. I thought that the counter punch at one point was going to be ball control, 12 personnel, and that's the way they were going to run the entire season. But they came out against Georgia. They had some scripted plays. They got off to a good start. And then what was their counter punch after halftime? They didn't have one.
They didn't. And they've never had one, by the way. This has been an issue with Josh Heupel from the start. We talk about in-game adjustments all the time. I mean, Dave, is it wrong to go the John Chavis route with Josh Heupel's lack of in-game adjustments?
No, he's a much smarter, better coach than John Chavis.
Okay, I'm just saying the in-game adjustments is a thing, and the lack of in-game adjustments are very glaring. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, and in particular, I go to Alabama last year and Georgia this year where things were going well, so they just came out and kind of did the same thing.
Yes. No, that is, yes, I agree. And Missouri, did you say Missouri too?
No,
Missouri and Arkansas this year threw totally different looks at Josh Heupel, didn't adjust at all. I get a lot of Josh Heupel in many ways, funny enough, reminds me of how Peyton Manning approached the game as a player, which is Josh Heupel. For those who don't know, Peyton Manning, and you know this, Dave, he didn't have that many calls in his playbook when he played in the NFL. He had maybe like 4 that they went to regularly, but he knew the defense's tendencies so well that he could determine which of those 4 plays to go to based on how they were lining up. The reads were so easy at that moment. So Peyton Manning went both ways on that, and he was very, very skilled at figuring that all out. I think Josh Heupel, the problem with Peyton Manning, the thing that would throw you off would be if Peyton Manning, if you threw a different look at him that he wasn't ready for. That 2013 Super Bowl where the Seahawks beat the brakes off him, they basically got hold of this. They basically figured out how he read their defense, and they changed everything the week of, and that's what happened. You're starting to see that issue with Josh Heupel in a lot of ways. And how is he going to adjust? Because this is a system offense now. This is like a Tom Osborne offense. Can I call it that, Dave? I don't mean they were in the triple option. I mean, Tom Osborne had a system. He had about 4 or 5 set plays that he went to, and he just went to those the whole game and reacted to what the defense was doing and determined which plays to do. I think that's what the Heupel offense is. It's not the Steve Spurrier.
Bigger, more physical, and more roided up.
Yes, more roided up's a good one. Exactly. And by the way, that one's true. But it's not like we call Josh Heupel modern day Steve Spurrier. I think you and I have talked about this for a while. Steve Spurrier didn't have a system. He just called it play to play, right? Based on what he thought was the best play at the time.
Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and say bank on it. Brought to you by Commercial Bank, and that is Josh Heupel is not Steve Spurrier. We need to stop making that comparison.
Commercial Bank is your neighborhood bank. What makes us different from other banks? We understand that every customer has unique opportunities, challenges, and financial concerns. We don't expect you to fit into the same box as the next person or business. Whether it's purchasing a home, saving for your child's future, or planning for your next vacation, we're with you every step of the way to navigate life's big decisions. Commercial Bank. Life made better.
Caleb, you think I'll go ahead and say bank on it too, brought to you by Commercial Bank. Josh Heupel's not going to make a change.
No, Josh Heupel's too arrogant. He's way too arrogant. This is a level, and this would be a level of admission of fault that is just, it's something he can never bring himself to do.
See, when he brought Kelsey Pope up, I wasn't crazy about that because I don't think you just bring people up for the most part. I think you go out and get the best coach you can. But Kelsey Pope turned out to be a good coach, and he's produced a Blitnikoff winner, and he's done all that. Now, we could say that he's more talented, but those players were more talented. But Kelsey Pope also had some time to grow up in this system. You're already at the point where you're knocking on the door of a national championship. If you thought that Joey Halzle would grow into this position, that's a bad idea because this is year 2. And if you're thinking he's going to take 3 years to grow into it, then you've wasted 2 or 3 years. And this too, Josh Heupel absolutely knows that this season is not good enough. You could hear it in his press conference on Monday. He knows it's not good enough. And he said, you're too deep into this program to say 10-2 is just fine. I'm paraphrasing, but that's essentially what he said, or the way they played against Georgia. I'm sorry, specifically.
Yeah, and I think what's throwing me off the most, Dave, is Josh Heupel is he's kind of shocked too by the issues. You can tell he didn't expect these issues with the program. And guys, he's not absolved from this. I'm seeing people on the message board say that, yes, it's the offensive coordinator. You got to change the offensive coordinator. But Josh Heupel hired the offensive coordinator, and it's his offense. This is, Dave, one of my favorite things I used to do, and again, it goes both sides. When I used to cover presidential administrations and politics, fans of a president, the president may do something policy-wise that they didn't like, and rather than criticize the president, they'll be like, well, they just got bad people in their cabinet that are making these decisions. Who put them in the cabinet?